Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. It's the KP King here, and today I'll be introducing to you my Revonn deck profile. The Last Card Revonn, the most powerful card in Aquaforce that it has right now, and just all the amazing stuff that this deck can do. So before we get into this deck profile, I want people to know that I had no interest in originally building this deck. I'm a Maelstrom guy. Maelstrom has my heart, but I decided to build Revonn simply because, why not? Revonn's it was the most popular, it still is one of the most popular Excel decks for right now until, other stuff comes out, and then it can still take on a lot of the decks that are coming its way. And I've seen some Japanese deck ideas for this. I just get a lot of my information for Vanguard deck building from Deck Sanders website. I'll leave the link in the description below to that. And then I saw a Wave Nations video on this deck, and I just saw so many different variations of this deck, and I was like, this looks fun. And Maelstrom hasn't gotten support in a long time, so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna build another Aquaforce deck because why not? So I decided to build Revonn, and boy oh boy, I've been having so much fun with this deck. It's unique, it's different, it's fast, and the way that I play it, people just don't see it coming. But this is one variation of the deck. I will be making a Blue Wing Revonn deck that features the Blue Wing cards into it at another time. But for now, I just want to show you guys the Revonn deck that I've been playing with and tell you guys some of my thoughts and feelings about how I feel about this. First off, we play 4 copies of Last Card Revonn. So Revonn is the main grade 3 of the deck, and I'm just going to say it now, the only grade 3 of the deck. I do not play Fort Vessel and I do not play the book, only because my issue with the book was if you don't have the soul for it, then the book is essentially a dead card. And Fort Vessel, you don't want to ride Fort Vessel, even for that other grade 3 skill, Last Card Revonn. And yeah, it was cool, but I'd rather just have Revonn skill at all times. So I played 4 copies of Last Card Revonn. Probably, honestly, the best grade 3 that Aquaforce has right now, besides Maelstrom. Its ability that lets you reduce the opponent's power, helps you with the multi-attackings, it makes all of your card effects works. It has the 15k and +1 drive to help with the card advantage issue that this deck has, and the +1 critical. You rarely get that ability, but if you do get it, it just makes this card more threatening. Everything about this card is just threatening, and because of the way its ability works, it synergizes with everything else that we have in the deck, which is exactly why Revonn is just it really is the last card. But overall, this card honestly makes Aquaforce right now. I don't think I would be playing Aquaforce even at locals if it wasn't for Revonn. Moving on to our grade 2s, we play 2 copies of Tidal Assault. Okay, so Tidal Assault normally I would say is like a staple in Aquaforce because, it's been almost every Aquaforce deck since Aquaforce came out because it's Tidal Assault. Who doesn't like more attacks? However, in a deck like this with the units that we play and the other cards, this card is honestly expendable in this deck because of its soul cost. Although you have Revonn to reduce the power and get the multiple attacks, there are other cards in this deck that can do that for less of the resources. And I feel like with Tidal Assault right now, the only reason why I chose it is because I like to go hard with that early game rush, even when I'm going first or second, so that's why I chose Tidal Assault. However, you can replace this card. I think another grade 2 that I like is you can play the book. You do have to change the deck around a bit if you want to play the book. You can play the grade 2, that's a 12k, and you can, if you want to, I've seen this happen in Japan a little bit, you can play the grade 2 that when it's in place, not when it's placed, but it's an ability where you get to rest a unit, it gets 5k for more power. I don't like that card just because it feels mediocre to me, and I'd rather rest my units from boosting or attacking, except for the one that you have to rest for Revonn's ability. So next grade 2 is 2 copies of Blue Wave Marine General Foivos. This card, it's another multi-attacking unit. It helps us generate board, and it's the only card in Revonn specific, so I just feel like it has to be played in the deck because it's a rest one, then call something else out. This way we don't have to use too many cards from our hand to build up our board, and that's why we need Foivos, because we need to build up our board to deal with that. And this is Narukami and Kaiba running around, Blade Master Vanquisher. Having this card to rebuild your front row is still very important. And then finally, for our next grade 2, we play 2 copies of Blue Wave Marine General Galileus, and he is back. So Blue Wave Marine General Galileus, this is our beat stick of the deck, and it's also our repeat attacker. For a counterblast, it can restand if your opponent's power is different, but you're going to be using Revonn's ability to subtract their power anyway, so you're obviously going to have the power to use the skill at any times. this is the card we want on our Vanguard, and this card we want on our rear guard on our Revonn turn, so that we can push harder and get at least 2 more attacks out of this. Moving on to our next grade 2, we play 4 copies of Coral Assault. Coral Assault, honestly, still the main staple of Aquaforce. You cannot play any Aquaforce deck without 4 of these guys. Coral Assault synergizes really well with the deck. You can obviously meet the 4 attack requirement easy with this deck. You can have 4 units at rest, combining with foibles and your other cards to get the card draw. Overall, it helps with our soul, our draw, and its power, while the opponent's subtracted power to get more advantage. For our next grade 2, we play 4 copies of Marine General of the Restless Tides Algos. So I have seen some decks kind of walk away from this card or not play it as much. I, on the other hand, think that Algos is still necessary. Algos, it's your main ride target of the deck other than Galileus. Just for this one gives you more attacks. Galileus gives you like a harder push against those force decks, or if you want to damage deny, then you don't have to do that. But I like Algos because he's searchable out with Nicholas, which is another great one that I'll be showing you in the deck, and him alone just gives us that early game rush on our when we go first, because we can have Galileus and then some of our other units in play along with Coral Assault and combined it for either more attacks, more card draw, or just to push our opponent and scare them using more cards from their hand. But either way, this is the main grade 2 that you want to ride so that you can help get that early game rush in. Moving on to grade 1s, we played 2 copies of Wheel Assault. So Wheel Assault, as much as I love this card, it's just our backup ride in the deck, because all of our grade 1s except one of them has a Vanguard ability, so therefore we have so many different ride targets that we want to ride into. But Wheel Assault, you can use his ability to draw a card and build up your board early, or you can play this card and have him switch out your board for multiple attacks, so that this way you can get as many attacks as possible with Revonn. Usually what I like to do is I like to put him behind the Vanguard or the rear guard so that I have more space on my rear guards to attack my opponent with, because after I boost it, you know, with Revonn or something, I can have this card switch places with my other units on the Excel circle at rest to get more attacks, as many as possible, because that's mainly how this deck works. So he just synergizes well with what we're trying to do, but I only have space for 2 of him right now. For our next grade 1, we play 3 copies of Storm Rider Nicholas. Personally, I don't like this card. It's okay, it's just an 11k, search out for your grade 2 to make sure you get your grade 2 ride. But because of the grade 2s amount of grade 2s we play in this deck, that's not really necessary. I would take this out if I could find something better. The only thing that I think right now that I would want besides this is either the Penguin or another Wheel Assault and throw something else in there. But I mainly play this card for the card advantage that it offers me, because it guarantees my next grade 2 most of the time, since it is a, you know, top 7 check. The extra power helps. You can throw out an Excel marker to make it more threatening, but really we just use this card to help our deck get more card advantage. For our next grade 1, we play 4 copies of Battle Siren Narissa. This card is your main plus card of the deck. This is the card that you can use to target for the rest of anything, and then she restands herself and gives you power, and then she also helps with your card draw. Combining this card with Coral Assault helps you get 2 cards to your hand towards the end of the turn, so that you can keep getting that card advantage back. You need to play 4 of this card. This is a staple of the deck. You have to play 4. Your deck will not work, in my opinion, if you don't play 4, because this is the card that everything she does was made for Revonn 2+. So I feel like 4 of this card is what's needed. We play 4 copies of Blue Wave Soldier Senior Baragios. I have the SVR1. So this card, this is our grade 3 search of the deck. We only play 4 grade 3s, and all 4 of them are, you know, Revonn. So we have to make sure we can find it. This card just helps us with our consistency, that we make sure that we can see our grade 3, and his 5k power bonus does include himself. I just learned that recently, so that's also very helpful. So he himself becomes a beat stick. So it's also good to have this, but again, this is another card to help our deck with our card advantage. To our grade 0s, I play 2 copies of Battleship Intelligence. Then I play 4 copies of Supersonic Sailor. Then I play 2 copies of Proxian Communications Sea Otter Soldier. 4 copies of Emerald Shield Pascal, and then 4 copies of Medical Officer of the Rainbow Elixir. So the one thing that I want to say about this deck and its trigger lineup is that this trigger lineup in this deck is very flexible. You honestly could run Rainbow in this deck. I actually am not opposed to that at all. I have seen Rainbow, but my issue with Rainbow is I learned this from Solomon Vanguard when I checked out his Aquaforce deck profile a long time ago, and I ended up realizing that I agreed with it, was that when you run Rainbow, it doesn't feel like you're focusing on a strategy. You're literally just relying on the luck of the trigger to do something. But the reason why I say Rainbow works out with this deck is because pulling a force or a crit either way is very good for your strategy. Because if you pull a force, then you're just saying that your extra attacks are all going to go through, because your opponent's Vanguard, even if they pull a damage trigger, they will only be at 18k if they're force, and if they're Excel or Protect, they'll be at 17k, and that force mark will make all your 9ks be 19, even if they don't have effect bonusing them. But with Revonn you will. So regardless, all of your units will hit with the front. It just feels like if you're playing fronts though, your opponent can take everything and just hope for those damage triggers to stack. Versus crits, you can stack a crit onto a restanding unit and have that unit stand for multiple times afterwards to get more attacks. So either way, I just felt like in this deck I wanted to play crits because me personally, I want to kill my opponent as soon as possible, and fronts in my opinion just don't get the job done. It's not like Maelstrom where I can stack fronts in the front row and I know that they can't stop me because of the way Maelstrom works. This deck works differently. It doesn't have that guard restrict that Maelstrom has, so therefore I chose crits to go with this for my personal play style. But that is all, you guys. That is all for the deck. I almost forgot, our starter is Coasty. But that's all, you guys. That is all for the deck. Like I was saying, thank you so much for watching. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I have plenty more content coming out. I am officially back, and I'll be making videos every single Friday again and having them posted on Fridays to have everything up to date. So also, if you have a friend that's interested in building this deck, make sure to share this video with them, and they can use this as a starter. When building this deck, I took inspiration from my experience with playing this deck, some Japanese deck lists, and some English deck lists I've seen when in previous tournaments is what all came together in making this. But overall, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I have new videos coming out next week, and I'll be seeing you real soon. So, bye guys.